All right, welcome everyone to today's panel, Inside the Mind of Solar Customers, from sales to ops to what you need to know about solar customers today. We're just gonna give people one more minute to trickle in before we begin. Like I said, we do have a joke for you on the screen. Maybe you can use that for Mother's Day in a couple of weeks and see what your wife thinks. Why don't we go ahead and start? But first, before we get into it, the answers to today's dad joke. What did one fly say to the other fly? Is this stool taken? Dean, what do you think?
I think that is a great dad joke. Being a dad myself, right?
Your kid's gonna like it?
Yeah, they're a little older, but they'll still like it. And they'll say, Dad, come on.
My kids will love it.
Awesome. All right. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming to today's event. I'm Scott Wynn, founder and CEO of Bodhi. We're a software platform that helps solar companies reduce the cost of poor customer communications. In case you haven't heard, you can now start using Bodhi for free. So just go to our website, bodhi.solar, to sign up. Now, today, we are going to try to answer the question one of our audience members succinctly asked. His name was Anshul from JF Energy. He asked, in an increasingly commoditized market, how do we differentiate ourselves to customers? So with that, I want to introduce the panelists who will try to answer that question. We've got two heavyweights from industry here today, along with one heavyweight from academia. They're going to try to answer this question, but also give you some tips that you can use in your solar business. So first, we have Professor Brian Bollinger. He is the professor of marketing at the NYU Stern School of Business. And one of Brian's area of research is what motivates people to go solar. We also have Dean Carfalate, CRO of Solar Insure. They provide 30-year warranties for solar and batteries, among other things. And finally, we've got Tim Polyansovich, a leading solar installer serving the Southern California market, I think always since 2011, even though his business started in 1999. So for those in the audience, if you want to get in touch with the panelists or myself, we're going to post their LinkedIn accounts in the chat box. All right, so before we dive in, I want to ask the audience a somewhat provocative question. So we're going to launch a poll. Where have you seen the biggest change in solar customers? Is it A, on the sales side, B, on the operations side, or C, on the service side? Tim, what do you think?
I definitely see on the sales side, there's been tons of changes there. Again, you mentioned the last one, service side, that's increasing a lot right now.
Yeah.
Especially that was mentioned. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was thinking about Dean. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say sales and service, because I'm not allowed to vote. I'm a panelist. I tried to get the poll, but definitely the sales has to be more technical now, than it was ever before, and more transparent.
Hey, Brian, how do you feel about those two questions or two answers from Dean and Tim?
I mean, Dean and Tim are much more in contact with the solar customer directly than I am. I see the background data with collaborations with Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, Connecticut Green Bank, and so forth. But all of that makes a lot of sense from what we're seeing in the data in terms of what leads people to adopt when you use predictive models. I wouldn't choose one over the other.
The audience believes, Tim, that is true. Sales side has seen the most change. The funny thing is, we normally also offer the option of all the above, but I wanted to do today was make everyone force them to choose one. So sales side is the leading, but hey, service side has been also is the second one, down at 13%. All right, so let's just get going here. I'm gonna stop sharing. All right, so let's dive into it. All right, we're going to organize the conversation into three parts. The first is, how have customers changed through the years? Because going back to that kind of poll questions, but then two, what are customers doing in today's market? I mean, market conditions are quite different than they were just a year and a half ago. So we're going to dive into some of those details, and then we're going to end with a Q&A session. So first off, we're all here because, you know, it's a pretty tough market for resi solar. I mean, consumer demand is low. But Tim, you started installing solar at an Infinity Solar in 2011. You know, back then it cost over $6, $6 to $7 per watt. We're now about half of that, give or take. What's the difference between what's motivating customers to go solar the past few years compared to back in 2011?
Again, it's always started from, let's say, the ROI, right? That's what people are really looking at. Years ago, obviously there was rebates through the state and federal, but now we only have the federal. But what we're noticing now, there are people that are wanting to go solar within these 2 years, even 3 years, because a lot of them, you know, there's a big demand for energy because of the EVs that they buy. That's one factor that we're seeing a lot of clients that I want to say about 80% of our clients have EVs. That's what I've been seeing.
Okay, cool. So then, Brian, I mean, Tim just talked about the ROI, and you've done kind of a lot of the studies looking at some kind of the financial kind of incentives as well. And I think you even looked at some differences between Republicans and Democrats. Are you able to speak about like what motivates some of these customers to go solar that it's in some of your research?
I mean, I agree with Tim. A lot of this goes back to the ROI, and I think consumers are much more aware of and able to assess ROI than they were before. You know, I started studying the industry in about 2008, and we went back to the early years in California, 2001, 2002. And, you know, when we ran surveys in 2011, I think it was, the modal number of installers that someone would look at was one. There just was no shopping around. Now you have tools like Google Sunroof out there where, you know, they have their own discount rate there, but you can plug in, you know, your energy bill. It incorporates your electricity rates that you're paying, and so you can get a much better sense of that ROI. And yeah, when you look at sort of more recent years, and you include that kind of data in predicting consumer adoption decisions, it is by far the most important characteristic. And we did find that that was more true for households who have a head of households who's registered Republican versus Democrat. So there is some difference across party there as well that you alluded to.
Okay. And then furthermore, when you also continue some of those studies on looking at customers going solar because of word of mouth. And all of us know that referrals, for example, is pretty much king in the resi solar industry. So are there any surprising findings from what you saw that drives word of mouth?
It can be a lot of different types of things that can lead to the role of social influence. Social proof is incredibly important. We partnered with a nonprofit called Smart Power to run solarized campaigns, and they've run these across the country and in places like India as well. And we looked at the role of the solar ambassadors, who essentially was the head volunteer in trying to work with installers who they were partnered with to get people to adopt. And the most important thing that led to successful campaigns was whether that solar ambassador adopted themselves as part of the campaign. So that provided some of that social proof. Now, there's other really important channels as well. We surveyed the adopters. Word of mouth within the campaign is incredibly important. And when we tried to expedite the campaign and compress it into a shorter period, you found that you could get just as many installations in the short term, but because you didn't see the same level of word of mouth, long-term adoption rates were lower in those towns. Visibility plays a role as well. You can actually code up the degree to which a solar installation can be seen by neighbors. And we found word of mouth effects or peer influence effects for non-visible installations stopped at about 100 meters. But those that could easily be seen from the road went at least beyond 1 kilometer. So there's a lot of different factors that feeds into that social influence.
So that's a factor of 10 in terms of if my panels are on the front, my neighbors can see versus them being on the back. Is that what you're saying?
It's a huge difference. And you know, we actually tested to see whether people want and are more likely to adopt based on whether your panels would be visible. And regardless of political affiliation, consumers don't want their panels to be seen. But if they are seen, right, that can lead to the social influence. And yeah, it's a huge difference in terms of the distance at which social influence then can operate.
Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, so Tim, Dean, hearing from some of these results from Brian, do you think any of those findings still apply to customers today?
Having them be able to see that is definitely differentiator, a proof that of concept. When I went solar back in 2009, and part of the reason why I went solar was prestige, right? So, and that's part of some of what is still going out. So someone else did it, I'm going to do it. Also, ROI was a factor, but you know, buying 10 solar panels for around $20,000 back then, right? It was definitely a little bit longer of an ROI, but the rebates were heavier. So I definitely see that today, the influence of that, and how HOA rules have changed, and how people have changed from back in the day to today.
Mhm. Tim,
No, I agree with Dean too. I've had many clients that they're going to go solar, big house, let's say down in San Clemente, but he'll say, I just don't want to drive my Maserati up the hill and I see panels right there. I want them in the back.
I'll
So
drive
now
his
he went from,
Maserati up
let's say
that hill for now.
25 panels that are south facing. Now he has to do 35 panels that are north facing. He's still going to get his production, but he's going to pay more.
That's
And
wild.
And then you get
Yeah.
other ones, just like Dean mentioned. It's like, yeah, it's cool. I want to see him. I want my friends to see him.
You know, so like back in the days, so am I hearing that there's really not as strong of a, what was it, the Prius effect back in the days? You know, back in the days when the Prius was big, Prius was sold as, you know, it was a hybrid that was better selling than any other hybrids. That's because it was showing off your eco consciousness. Is that not as strong of a factor anymore?
I would say back then in the day, there were silver frame panels. They look a lot more aesthetically pleasing now with black on black. Would you agree, Tim?
Oh yeah,
And,
absolutely. Night and day.
yeah. And black racking, sleek looking, closer to the roof, and everything. It just looks so much better than they used to look.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is actually a pretty good segue. There's a question from Tim DeCalvo. Why are Americans so focused on ROI and much less on environmental impacts? Is there a way to ask questions to get the customer to slightly adjust their thinking, provide some value to environmental aspects? Who wants to take this?
I'll
Brian,
jump
you want to
in
do
on
that?
that one actually, if it's okay, because it's interesting. If you take the location as given, so electricity rates for the same per, you know, different people are the same. The financial benefits map perfectly onto the environmental benefits, right? If we're just talking about the role of solar irradiance, right? The more of my electricity bill I can offset, right? The more grid electricity I'm offsetting. Now, it does depend on grid mix, but if we're talking about within the same utility district, same utility rates. And so they kind of go hand in hand. So actually why people adopt does matter a little bit. If you're adopting for prestige effects, like Dean said, right there, it's less important how much of the grid electricity you're offsetting. If you care more about the financial benefits, that is actually caring indirectly about the environmental benefits. And in those solarized campaigns, we actually tested to see whether focusing on environmental or community-based benefits might be a more effective type of messaging for some types of communities. And in particular, we were focused on low-income versus high-income communities. And we found that focusing on the individual financial benefit for high-wealth communities was far more effective. For low wealth, both types of messaging worked equally well. So it was the case that you could try this alternative type of messaging, but it didn't become more effective than focusing on those economics.
Great. So let's I want to start to turn our attention, our customers to the customers today. So I want to get us warmed up and I'm going to do some rapid fire. And what that means, I'm going to ask you guys some questions, one question, but max 3-word answer. You got to like just top of your head. So here's the question. What is one common misconception that customers have today about going solar? Tim. Brian, you got one?
Well, I was going to say sometimes clients go, is it going to cover all my energy needs? I know that's more than 3 words.
All right. Brian, what about you?
Hard to say whether they're misconceptions or not. I mean, with storage, I think there's lack of certainty about the type of benefits that people can get from storage, especially if they're coupled with time of use pricing. I think there's some uncertainty. That's way more than 3 words. I'll stop there.
Okay. All right. We're good. Batteries. That's actually really, I mean, I've talked to installers. Customers don't understand batteries for the most part.
They don't. You're right. They don't.
Dean, what about you?
Yeah, for me, being a warranty minded, like what is a workmanship warranty? Is it labor? Like what is it? Because
What, yeah, what
homeowners
is a
think it,
workmanship warranty?
right?
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I bought my system. I know it comes with 25-year warranty on my panels, but yeah, tell me more. Let's dive into that a little bit. Dean, can you elaborate on that point?
Yeah, so workmanship usually means like the installer made a mistake. They didn't tighten a screw, or they put a lag in and didn't as far as for the flashing and it leaks. Or let's say they didn't install a firmware update or didn't wire something correctly, or they put a too big of a string on an inverter, and those sorts of things. Those are types of workmanship warranty issues.
Okay. And then how does that, so how do why is that a misconception versus for customers?
They think if my panel's broken, my installer is going to go out and come and fix it for free as long as that warranty is in place.
The 25 years.
For 25 years. Don't you love that, Tim?
Yeah.
Now, once again, if in the audience, if y'all have questions for the panelists, feel free to just put them in the Q&A. That's where I'm going to be able to see them the best. I know some of you are putting it in the webinar chat, but definitely put them in the Q&A and I'll get to those. Now, let's move a little bit now from that. I think we'll probably get back to all this issue with warranties, but one of the things that I think is very popular these days that a lot of people are talking about, at least, is that we've got this big trend in the industry to move from loans to TPOs, third-party ownership financing. These are like PPAs and leases. So Tim, let me ask you, how does a customer think of these different financing options? That are being presented to them, from a loan to leases to PPA? Are they more comfortable with one? What might scare them about some of the other ones? Can you answer that?
Yeah. So when it comes to loan and PPA, well, PPA is a power purchase agreement. So then you're buying the power. The way to sell that is like, well, you're going to be buying Edison or San Diego power. I can offer you this power at a cheaper rate and a lower escalator or a zero escalator. The loans now, because of the higher interest rates and the higher dealer fees, it's again, before it was like a $300 bill, you do a loan, now you got a bill that's $200. That's a pretty big gap of a savings. Now your loans are about maybe a $30 to $40 difference. So that's sometimes they just figure, I'd rather just do a loan or they'll do cash. We see a lot of cash happening, but when it comes to a third party, I see a lot of that happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Clients are wanting to go that route.
Okay, so what you describe is kind of like just the basics of bill swaps. But then you were telling me that there was one customer of yours who was very adamant about PPA. Can you describe more about that one customer?
Yeah, that client, he didn't want to do a loan. Actually, when you do the loan, it was such a large system with batteries, the payment was just the same or slightly higher than what he's normally paying. So then that PPA actually is lower when it comes down, like he's buying his energy at like 19.5 cents with a 2% escalator versus he's buying energy at 42 cents right now from, let's say, Edison. So it's a big difference right there. And qualifications are very easy on PPAs versus loans. They look at, DTI and other factors, but again, it's the leases and the PPAs are strong, just like that's what helped out the industry in 2008 and 2009 when there was that recession. So right now, if interest rates go down, you'll start seeing loans go up and then PPAs go down.
Yeah. Brian, are you able to speak to about any of those? Have you studied that at all?
I mean, I just would echo what Tim said. We are estimating discount rates for different households, and the degree to which they discount the future is incredibly important in their decision to buy one product versus the other. And these are differences that are across households as well. In sort of ongoing work, we're essentially looking at two households, one in which they might have a higher upfront cost and getting that same stream of benefits, again, because they have different amount of sunlight hitting their roof. And you can estimate discount rates of around 10% for higher wealth households and 15% for low wealth households, which means that that stream of benefits they're going to get down the road is discounted by 50%, which is huge, and also feeds into net energy metering policy and all that kind of stuff. And so how attractive a loan product is really is determined in large part by the kind of loan rates you can get, which goes back to Tim's points.
Okay. All right. Let me ask another. This is one question, great follow-up question from Michael Stoudemire to this. How do you talk to solar customers about how to manage a 20-year power plus financial product relationship when installers go bankrupt on average every 3 years? Dean, you see a lot of the impact of these companies going out of business. Can you tell us what happens when these orphan customers contact y'all?
Yeah, so I'll just talk about the impact of that. So Solar Insure talks to everybody. 90% of our phone calls are from homeowners, and they're in a few different buckets. Ones that are our homeowners that the provider's still in business, another bucket where the provider is out of business and they have our warranty, and then they're truly orphan homeowners that don't have our warranty. And there, I'll just talk about one review. It's from Darla, and she actually called our company and talked to Nate, one of our CSRs, and she was literally in tears because her battery was malfunctioning and backfeeding the grid, and she was getting a triple electricity bill because of this. And he was able to help her calm down, answer her questions. We were able to get access to, monitor. We have fleet monitoring available to access the system. And we were able to help her. There was some CT issues going on, and we were able to help get that situated for her. And when all was said and done, her tears of frustration were turned to tears of joy, because now she says, hey, I spent this, $50,000-$60,000 on a solar and battery system, and it wasn't working, and now it was. So we really, that's what we provide for the homeowners, and many times we have hundreds of reviews. Check them out online.
And Dean, you told me the story like in the past, but one of the things that caught my attention was she was frustrated, and it wasn't just about she was wondering if she would made a bad decision, but it wasn't just about herself, but she thought about in terms of her family, right? Can you elaborate on that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So she was sitting there like, I just spent all this money and it's not working, and I'm paying more than what I was expected to pay. And she was literally saying, what did I just do? I just scammed? Was this, and it was a terrible situation to be in. And really, unfortunately, we see this happening time and time again. And really, we've even had other homeowners that reached out to a dozen different companies before they reach out to us. They're not our customer, but we help them, and they sing our praises as far as helping them out. So we are the trusted resource for the industry for all homeowner inquiries to be able to answer questions about their solar and battery systems.
Yeah. So Tim, is this why you always offer Solar Insure for all your customers?
Oh, absolutely. It just peace of mind. At least I can tell a lot of all my clients that I've been in business since 1999, and my first install was basically 2009. And then we really geared up, 2011, and just from there, just went full steam ahead. But no, again, peace of mind, 100%.
All right, awesome, great. Okay, I don't want to keep just with the doom and gloom here. I do want to keep moving. There is one question from Dave Carey. This is California focus. Challenges with NBT in California. Please discuss. I'm not sure what NBT stands for. Can anyone take that?
Was he trying to type NEM?
I'm not sure. Okay, Dave, can you elaborate on your question, and we might get back to it. Okay, one other question. This is from Emmett, who was going back to the Brian's research that shows that you can actually do and get better word of mouth with street-facing panels. So here's his idea, and this is directed to you, Tim. How about the idea of incentivizing customers to put solar panels street-facing? Good idea or not worth the hassle?
Oh, no, I recommend it. Street facing, absolutely.
Yes.
If it's productive.
would you give them an extra discount if they did? Versus like, let's say you're Maserati person, you're like, hey, I'll I'll shave off however many thousands of bucks.
No,
Okay.
no, it's just, yeah, that's, yeah, if they want to go in the front, that's awesome, great. You know, put it in the back, you have to add more panels and then give them a discount on that. No, it's just, that's up to them.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. Now I've got this question. I've got this. NBT stands for net billing tariff, which is a more accurate name for NEM 3.0 or NEM
Oh,
3.
okay.
So, yeah, Tim, you want to take this right now? Because we're
Yeah.
talking about doom and gloom.
So basically, what's the question for NEM 3?
What are some of the challenges that you're seeing with dealing with NEM 3?
You have to have a battery. And that battery, you know, that's 5,000, 15,000, you know, it could be 20,000. And for, let's just say our area where we're at, like a 2,000 square foot house, it's recommended to have at least 15 to 20 kW of storage just to float you from, you know, more than just 4 to 9. You want to carry over. You don't want to really sell any of your power back to the grid. It's like 8 cents, 9 cents. But you want to sell it back when they're offering to buy it back at a higher rate.
Okay, so batteries are a must for sure. I think I saw attachment rates last I saw was like 95% or so nowadays. But then one thing you told me, Tim, was that consumer education has actually helped with sales and with in this 3.0 NEM 3.0 world. Can you elaborate on that, on why that was the case?
Oh, the question, like, why are clients more educated, you're saying, or
No,
on
why
the,
has educating customers? Because I think you told me that most customers are still one of the misconceptions you told me about was of them still thinking when they went from NEM 2.0 to NEM 3.0 that it's no longer good to go solar at all.
yeah, that's correct. That's correct. So I do tell them, it's like, you know what, you're going to be buying power and the power is always going to go up. And in this case, you know, again, if you're going to do solar, there's an option, do the batteries and do basically load shift, just grid tied only. If the power goes out, everything goes out. And then there's the other option, well, I want backup capability too. You can add that too, but that's an extra, you know, it could be $4,000 because now you're pulling wires out of a panel and you're getting pretty radical on a lot of electrical work at that point.
Okay, and so has that, so how does that change with going from so there's all this rush of everyone trying to get in on the NEM 2.0. And so we've seen a decline with once 3.0 took effect, but are your conversations changed? Have they changed a lot? I mean, you've been doing batteries for a long time.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's again, NEM 2.0 was, you know, basically whatever you sell back, you get whatever you produce, they're going to give you that fair market value of whatever you buy. So it was a wash even. And that's why you have to have a battery. And the misconception, some installers or salespeople will like offer a one battery, 5 kW, and then have this solar system and they promise them it's going to be good for you. And it's not. It's because they need to have a little more storage. And that's one thing too, you really have to analyze and get to know the customer. What is your lifestyle in your home? Are you like run a lot of power during the day and then slow down at night, or are you kind of the opposite? That determines how many batteries you got to build.
Yeah. And then Brian, you've actually started studying some of the patterns for people buying solar plus batteries and solar plus other things. Can you talk about any of those findings?
Yeah, I quickly wanted to say something about sort of the role of NEM 3.0. This is actually a big motivation for trying to do things like estimate households' discount rates. You know, in California, where under traditional NEM policies, you could offset at your retail rate, that's a benefit that high consumption households value a lot more because they are at a higher retail rate. And so the distribution of consumers adopting under NEM 3.0 will probably change too. The role of discount rates, again, factors in because lower wealth households value the stream of benefits you get from kind of the older feed-in tariff rate at a lower rate than high wealth. So if there was policy appetite to take some of this huge payment essentially to utility companies under NEM 3.0 and provide that in upfront incentives, maybe through an increase in the ITC, you could actually see similar adoption levels, but a different mix where lower wealth households are also adopting solo. So there are some policy remedies if there's an appetite for that.
Okay.
For batteries, we do find that outages are a big factor in terms of the value that people place on batteries. And, we are estimating a model to try to predict what would happen if outages were higher or lower. And we find that if outages went up, let's say by 20%, you'd find co-adoption rates about 10% higher than they are now, and total solar adoption rates at about 3 or 4% more than they are right now. Because it's really useful to have that as the backup generation, again, that Tim just alluded to.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So speaking of batteries, there's a question here from Chance. Not only do consumers do they not understand batteries, is it also the case that sales reps and installers also don't understand batteries to the point that they would be able to effectively educate customers? What can we do to better up-level the industry regarding storage? Dean, you want to try to answer that? I know you guys do quite a bit on the battery side, and you guys warranty some of them too, right?
Yes, we have 10 batteries on our ABL, including Tesla. And what we do is we had a battery webinar this time last year to talk about this because of the net metering, and also talking about our battery warranty for 20 years. And it's reinsured through Zurich North America. But getting the green button data from the homeowner, I would say that would be like level up your sales presentation. Go do your research, know your customer, know their habits, know if they're going to have a baby, or if they're going to have kids moving out, if they're getting an electric car. The electrification of the home is here as well. So those sorts of things are the questions that you're preparing them for the future. And this is the discovery. This is all part of the discovery in the beginning. Take that time. This is not a one-pitch close thing to try to do to homeowners. Show them, do the research, and help them, be consultants. That's what our recommendation is: educate, 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 and consult.
Tim, how do you educate your sales folks? Are there trainings that you
Yeah,
get them?
there's definitely trainings. And just like what Dean said, you have to be the person to draw out that customer, find out their lifestyle, and knowing if they are going to be, again, having children, or just basically you think your kids are going to be moving back in with you. You just don't know, but you want to ask them questions. And again, you're building a system that's going to offset their energy needs. And if you just need to know that to add more panels and then add a few batteries, it could be the opposite. Keep the same panels, but add more batteries.
Mm-hmm. There was actually a study where they found a rebound effect where customers who are going solar, on average, they actually use 30% more electricity after going solar than they did before. So
I've seen that. I've seen that definitely, because they just think it's just endless power. And then again, they all of a sudden would say, like, I had a customer who did that, and he's like, I'm using more power than ever. And so it's like I Google into his house and I see it. I'm like, wouldn't you add a pool in the backyard? It's just, they don't realize some of these energy needs that, EV cars. Now I got 2 EV cars. It's just.
So Brian, I mean, you've studied solar plus batteries. Can you say anything more about solar plus, like the whole home electrification trend, and any patterns or any studies that you want to try to look into?
Just that, there's a lot of interest in trying to explore from the Department of Energy and other organizations the role of complementarities across these technologies. This can, heat pumps, electric vehicles. We talked about storage already. There's a paper out of, I think, UCLA trying to document some complementarities right now between EVs and solar. We're finding some similar stuff with household level data in Connecticut. It's not great. In some cases, there's a clear complementarity that's economic. In some cases, it's not necessarily an economic complementarity, but there are behavioral factors as well. If I start to identify as a green consumer because I have solar, right, that can actually change the way I face the decision to get an EV. So there's other mechanisms that work as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, back in a few years ago, I think solar was always considered this gateway to home electrification, but I think it's actually changed. I mean, Dean or Tim, can you talk about the fact that probably the path towards home electrification can actually come from other products first or services? Like, for example, if someone gets an EV, they might do an EV charger, realize their electricity bill just doubled. Then they're like, hey, Tim, I want solar. Will you guys ever install heat pumps eventually? How do y'all think about all that?
No, I see heat pumps being added now on these, these efficient air conditioners. They have now they're doing heat versus they're not buying gas. So now that's another factor you have to kind of consider too. Is like, all right, now I got to build up a few extra panels here, probably 4 to 6, just to accommodate this heat pump now. And you're absolutely right. All those are all adders.
Yeah, Dean, what are you seeing in the market?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, EV is definitely, we're going to probably see more EV adoption faster than solar adoption, right? And then that's going to spur on solar. So that's what we're seeing. And as far as us in the future, we definitely are looking at other products like to be able to add to our warranty, like the EV chargers and other things that are going to be in the smart electrification of the home.
Would you ever put heat pumps on that list? So on the
It may
solar
be.
service?
It's possible. Yeah. So that's not right away. That's a future thought. But yeah, absolutely. We want to be the warranty provider for the electric home, the modern home.
Okay. And then Tim, let me ask, heat pumps are quite different than electrical work. Would Infinity Solar ever install or sell heat pumps, or would you guys partner with other contractors?
I would leave that profession to, like, let's say an air conditioning company, someone who has that, license to do so.
Mhm.
Definitely it'd be a thought of even teaming up with an air conditioning company. You can
Okay.
basically almost like do both projects. You got the heat pump and AC, now you got your solar and battery
Mhm.
kind of combination.
Cool.
There are heat pump campaigns that have been modeled after the solarized campaigns. So Juneau, Alaska, for example, had a thermalized campaign, exact same type of format, still trying to leverage social proof throughout the campaign, leverage these sort of volunteer ambassadors who love their heat pump and want to show it off to people. And so the consumer mindset can be similar across these technologies.
But since the heat pump is like now in a closet, is the radius now like 10 meters instead of 100?
Well, it's a great point. You're going to rely a lot more on word of mouth rather than that visual aspect.
Mm-hmm. How did that campaign fare, Ryan? Do you know?
I mean, it was a much smaller scale campaign than some of the solarized ones, but I mean, given the size of the campaign, I think it fared well. The fact that, that city happens to be supplied by a lot of hydro power means that you knew it was going to be clean electricity as well. And so that was a big calling point for people.
Okay, that's great. All right, we're gonna get into some questions. We've got one from Kevin Baker now. So this is kind of moves off to a slightly different topic, but I've seen a few websites with software that either exaggerate how much a system will cost and or how much they're paying for electricity in kilowatt hours. Do you encounter unrealistic or / inaccurate proposals from customers when comparing quotes? Definitely it's true. I guess maybe this question's for you, Tim. Do you actually see your prospects, your leads competing proposals?
Yeah, no, that is interesting because I know you can, again, as a salesperson or as a company, you can manipulate that production of the power by just, when you're designing the system, all of a sudden, is there shading? There could be slight shading. So we always do like a percentage that's fixed. I don't want to overpromise. Some installers are overpromising. They just do down like 0 shade, and all of a sudden you have all this solar production. compared to if you knock it down, let's say 10%, down to 90% potential sunlight, then yeah, I've seen that across the board. And I looked at it and I've also told the owner, I go, this is what he's doing. I'm sorry, but,
What are
or,
the owners, when you point that out to the owners, how does that generally fare?
you know, I mean, their eyebrow pops up and, you know, they kind of question it at that point. And then if they want to take my word for it, it is what it is. But if they want to sign up with them, I just tell them, hold them to that production. Definitely
Okay.
hold them. Because I just let you know, like, that's the difference when when you're going to sell a PPA or a lease, they automatically, you have to be like at 10% less.
Mm-hmm.
You know, loans, you know, that's handled by a bank or a credit union. You know, they're not gonna, they don't really promise any power production, but the
Yeah.
leases, the PPAs do.
That's right. That's true. So then, Dean, I mean, some of these other companies that work kind of similar in y'all's space, they do provide some production guarantee, at least the first year one. How does Solar Insure think about these potentially unrealistic production numbers?
Yeah, so it all depends on the tool and the percentage. Some of these PPAs have like an 80% production guarantee and they don't pay out for 3 years. Like they wait 3 years. So like if it's a low production 1 year, the homeowner is still going to be paying that electricity bill. And then if they are able to help it, if it produces better in the 3rd year and makes up for the 2nd year, the homeowner still has to pay that. And then the production guarantees are generally like might be 19 cents back or 20 cents back, right? And Tim, what's the electricity rate in your area?
Averaged about 43.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it really doesn't, really doesn't. So a lot of them are really geared toward like to try to give peace of mind. But in reality, it doesn't really offset what it really costs the homeowner if it doesn't produce what is promised. So we feel like having the system functioning and being able to make sure that repairs are done timely and throughout the service of the life of the system of 30 years is most important for their investment.
So here's another question that kind of feeds off of that. Great follow-on question. This is from Michelle Solano. This might be fun for y'all. Are customers interested in a web-based self-service sales experience, effectively cutting out the sales consultant?
They could save money.
Yeah. Yeah, so like Tesla's been doing that for quite some time. Like go out and take pictures of your house and your site survey. We've seen that where it's a text message, that's the call, right? That's the level of service. But there today, still right now, there is still a high level of customers that want that high touch service to be able to know this. And we have several contractors that sell right up against manufacturers that directly install and win deals because they can't install fast enough or they don't have the service level that needs to be there for the homeowner. I'll throw that rest over to Tim.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to, like you mentioned, if they want to deal with just electronic online, again, I see it where a lot of the customers, well, mine at least, they like to have that hands-on, talk to somebody, and be more educated when you're dealing with a salesperson. Yeah, that's what they're getting.
So would the reduction of like 4K, 5K from lower sales commission, would that be sufficient for them to take a little bit more friction in the buying process?
I would say that would be really amazing, right? So that would definitely be able to help out the industry.
Brian, do you have any comments on this? Like, what kind of personalities would be, hey, I just want to buy this like I bought, like back in the days, 10, 20 years ago. It could still happen today. Actually, it happens today too, but even like 20 years ago, one could buy a computer. Just go online, you can configure whichever computer you want, options and everything. You never actually have to go into a Best Buy or anything. Will we get to that stage anytime soon?
I think Dean and Tim are better positioned to answer that. You know, when we tried to even use an online platform 10 years ago to just elicit bids as a first stage, you know, there were some technology barriers. I was an older population at that time. I would say adopting than maybe now. Um, so maybe, but I haven't seen anything to say that the customer interaction at service is not still a necessary component right now.
Okay. What about, so I'll bring up 2 points. I've seen Project Home, I think, or Project Solar. They can advertise that you can buy solar for like $1.6 per watt. But then the second thing is with, there's still low penetration, but there are more customers who going solar multiple times now. Are these the type of folks that are best for this type of online buying experience, self-serve online experience?
I've seen that website, and it is a little bit misleading because that's after tax credit that you're mentioning, that price point.
Okay.
So that's the thing right there. And then also they have fixed overall. I mean, I'm really surprised because I heard they are selling a lot from one of my vendors. And again, they outsource all their installs to another third-party company.
Mhm.
That's what I was seeing.
All right. All right, great. So let's move on. We've got a question from Michael Kearney. So this is going back to the heating and cooling of homes. It seems that solar arrays placed on the south side of a house do help cool homes down by absorbing that heat energy instead of it baking the roof and then the home. Is it not easy to show or prove, but do you think it's worth mentioning it to prospective customers?
I see why not. I mean, I've had a client like that if they have a vaulted ceiling and it's south facing. And I do mention it's like, hey, that's going to basically deflect a lot of the heat directly on your roof. So you might notice some change of temperature. I don't promise them, but
All right, sounds good there. Okay, here is, I guess this is another one that's kind of similar, but just a reminder, we are in the Q&A session. I don't think I explicitly said that. So if you do have a question for the panelists, just type them into the Q&A box. All right, here's a question again from Kevin Baker. Do customers prefer to be sold virtually or at the kitchen table?
It depends. It depends, but we still see a lot of door knocking going on. We still see a lot of in-home. And as far as there are full virtual sales teams, and it just depends, right, on the comfort level of that homeowner and what they prefer. And we are out of pandemic, but still there are a lot of homeowners that still prefer, like, they don't want someone in their home. Maybe even before that, before pandemic, they didn't want anyone in their home, and they wouldn't mind to do a virtual, and it's less pressure possibly for them. And I think both have definitely have a value.
yeah, we're about 5% that we're in-house.
Oh, wow. So 95% are
Yeah.
all virtual? Okay.
Yeah, it's all virtual over the phone. If they want to do a Zoom like right here,
Mhm.
done that before, and they're busy. Everyone's busy. That's the thing.
Tim, have you or anyone on your team just sold a system just via text message?
Via text message through? No. No. That'd be pretty good.
That'd be pretty fun. Okay, I'm not sure it'd be fun, but okay. All right, we've got some other questions here. This is actually from Emmett. He said, I've heard from several well-respected solar leaders of legitimate organizations that their sales are down despite selling mostly cash deals. What they've told me is it feels like people want to hold on to their dollars right now. Is the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey the correct resources to track that sentiment? Brian, do you know about these?
I mean, it's a useful survey. It's not clear from the question to me why people want to hold on to their dollars right now. Is it because of lack of confidence in the economy, or is it just because there are other places to put your money that can guarantee pretty nice risk-free returns right now? So it really depends on the reason why they are maybe less reluctant to spend But that is a good resource, I think.
Okay, are there any, I mean, I get, if the industry is just trying to figure out, hey, what's the leading indicator for maybe when the market will rebound for us? Should they be looking at that survey, or is there some other index that's even better to look at?
I don't have another index that I would, say look at in lieu of that. I think that's a fine one if it's around confidence.
Okay, great. All right, we've got a question here from Chance. Again, is it possible that environmental sensibilities might matter more in markets where going solar is not cost effective? Factors like low cost of power or low buyback? Brian, do you know, can you answer that?
I mean, if the goal is to spur adoption, yeah, I think, and this goes back, I think, to some of the things we found in terms of sort of Democratic head of households versus Republicans, where maybe, on average, Democratic heads of household value the environmental benefit more, where you see sort of maybe higher baseline adoption rates, and it's less tied to the economic value, right? Because there can be other sources of value other than the reduction in your electricity bill. Dean had mentioned one of them. Now, in terms of marketing, it depends on the degree to which you're comfort in sort of pushing these other benefits, which are very focused on, again, it's non-pecuniary benefits. It's not a financial benefit. And so if the consumer's okay with that, great. And if not, I think you have to be a little careful.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so I kind of, if I listen to that, I hear if you're in a market where the ROI isn't that great, look for the Democrats and push all the benefits.
So that's not what I'm trying to say. But, there is some value in social signaling. For example, that you mentioned the pretty well-known hybrid vehicle paper, where in the state of Colorado they found increased willingness to pay of up to, I think, $5,000 for Priuses. You could sort of compare Priuses at that point to the Civic, right, which is not as easily recognizable as a hybrid vehicle. And you found this, larger price premium of willingness to pay in sort of more Democratic leading counties. And so there clearly was value that consumers got from being able to signal their environmental credentials, right? So if it's about solar adoption and that signaling is valued by consumers, then it is something else that you are providing when you provide solar. Now, the big caveat, of course, is that the environmental benefit of actually installing solar is very tightly linked to the economic benefit.
Mm-hmm. All right, sounds good. All right, we've got only 5 minutes left before the end of the session. So I've got one last question I want to ask each one of you. What is one super practical, tactical thing that each person that's listening right now, that can they go back and try at their business? So let's start with you, Tim.
What's one practical way of how they can basically make their business thrive?
Yeah, well, at least be a little bit better than they were today.
Yeah. Really, again, it starts from the sell point, right? Is just educate your customer or your client, soon to be client, and make them feel comfortable of what you're offering them is true. That's the bottom line. You got to sell a product. That's going to be, again, for NEM 3, you have to have batteries. So, and best way to do it is be partnered with a good battery company, whether it's Tesla, Enphase, Franklin. Those are really the only three I mess with. I don't want to deal with R&D on other companies, be their guinea pig.
All right, that's great. Dean or Brian, let's go with you first.
I just say that consumer trust is very important. Over the years, we found the role of trust really moves the needle. And I think it's echoing Tim's point there. One thing I do hear from some consumers is that they worry that some of the, especially sort of online advertisements that they get, that they're scams, that it can't be real. It's too good to be true. And so the importance of trust in that relationship, I think is critical.
Mm-hmm. And Dean?
I would definitely say compliance, and do what you say you're going to do, and make sure that everyone in your organization is trained all the way through and through to be able to deliver on what your promise is.
Okay, so I think that wraps it up. So thank you so much, guys. This has been an awesome conversation. Hopefully you enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed moderating it. So, and I think the audience probably has tons of more questions that they want to continue to ask. So if you'd like to contact the panelists here again, are their LinkedIn accounts that we're going to put in the chat. And finally, I just want to thank the audience for joining us today. And if you like this panel, let us know. And if you have a topic that you'd like to explore, for us to explore in a future webinar, just send me a note on LinkedIn. And then one final plug. Bodhi's got a big announcement that we're making in just 1 week. So if you can guess what that is, send me a note. And if it's right, I'll send you back a rack of Texas smoked ribs. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today and wishing everyone a really busy Q2. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.